we had heard that this was going to happen for a while, that there would be a partnership, collaboration, learning opportunity for some time. So it was probably October 2015 when Linda Wagen, who was the executive director of Ohio Citizens for the Arts at that time, approached us, and we started talking. And it really was just us sitting in a room saying, hey, we want to work together. Our networks are interested in doing creative placemaking projects, but we don't really know what this looks like. And so it was probably a solid 9 months of chatting of what could even a collaboration look like before we really started coming up with something, which became this project.
What excites me about this project is it's basically a blank canvas. Similar to a piece of art, it can become whatever we want it to be. No two creative placemaking projects or sites are the same. And so what might be right for one community or one site is not necessarily right for another one.
I've been asked a lot about what is creative placemaking, particularly as we look to bring these symposiums together. And it wasn't a word that I used a lot before, though it would seem that we were already doing it, but it wasn't the intention to define creative placemaking with the work we were doing. It's been a broader term for me as these conversations have gone on. But for us, it's been there's two words, so creative, everything is about art, which of course it is, and placemaking about making a space for the community. But when we run a mural program, it's very obvious. There is a mural on the wall, great. There is a piece of art in the community, and it seems very obvious, and it should be, and that's great. But it goes much broader and much deeper than that, as I've seen. That integration about artists having conversations with developers and with programmers and with cities throughout the nation about making a space for the community where the arts is integrated wholly solely, and you may not see a piece of art. And that's the biggest surprise for me, that the art is there, but it's intrinsic. It's been built into the conversation, and it may be about how the space was created or who the space was created for, not that it's an artistic space. And that's been a bigger way of thinking that's really inspired me to look broader at our projects and look broadly at the community.
That this used to be the old Strauss building, and the old Strauss building for a while was a department store, and then a little bit after that it was converted into some office building, and then it just sort of lay in disrepair. But after that, with a lot of money from the city and with the help of ArtsWave, which what their entire mission statement is to be able to provide affordable housing and the ability to foster the artistic spirit within the artists who live here. We were able to build this up into something really amazing where a whole bunch of artists can live and work and grow with the community.
Creative placemaking is open in terms of planning and deciding the future of the community. It's not held in secret. It's inclusive. And it's, when I came to Zanesville, in 1980, I was with Ohio University campus and held a meeting of community leaders. And I did a similar thing 30 years later. The first time there were no women, the second time one. It was all guys that have this color hair and were white and old white guys. And that is not inclusive. That is control, and one of the reasons why the community didn't grow. I mean, at one time it had a population larger than Columbus. And so there's a very, one comedian said, Zanesville, the home of white studies. Anyway, that type of attitude, which is not encourage people of color to remain there. Although we have the largest percentage of African Americans in any of the Appalachian counties, other than the new 3 counties, which are the flatland Appalachian counties that extend up to Lake Erie. But you know, having openness, having diversity, inclusion, those are things that make for people and communities to succeed, and the success is based upon acceptance of different ideas, the willingness to say this is a bad idea, and the willingness of certain individuals to take leadership roles, not to roll over people, but to enroll people in making things happen.
And my studio in Zanesville, and we are very lucky. We live here because of many reasons. And the first reason, I think this is very important. And we live here for the people around this community. Because you can see that anywhere, you don't need to lock the door. You don't need to just take care of something. Oh, okay. But we feel very comfortable because the people are very kind. And also, I think this
John is very important in bringing in artists from all over the world. Since he is Chinese and from Langzhou, he has contacts with 2 universities, and where there's an exchange that goes on between those universities and Muskingum and our downtown arts project. So there's some neat things that go on. That's always a very active thing. And John is internationally known. It's just not China. He's known in France and Italy, and he's wanted everywhere, but he chose to come to Zanesville. That's a really important part of this building and people.
Sure what it was at first, and I thought because the Fitton Center for Creative Arts was hosting it that it was very arts heavy. But I'm an urban planner and I know what placemaking is, and I just didn't make the connection that this was a perfect fit for me to be here. And so when he started explaining more about what the goal was, it just seemed like a great place to come, or a great event for me to come to, be inspired and learn new things. One thing I plan to use is maybe some of the brainstorming strategies, actually, because just the strategies themselves to help me when I'm meeting with I have a couple business district associations I work with, and to help them work through the creative process in a more structured way. I work with a lot of creative people that own their own creative businesses, and I think these processes might be helpful for us to reach some consensus on how to move forward.
We're table 2, and we got all excited at the beginning before we started brainstorming, so we picked 2 topics. We were working on pre-K readiness and summer eating. So one of the things that kept coming up when we were trying to tackle, frankly, both of these problems individually, but then together, was to try to create basically like an outdoor community center, and essentially we created an alternative school. It would be part community garden, part industrial kitchen, to be able to prepare meals that could be served from things, produce grown on the grounds, could be part farmer's market, could be part teaching kitchen, so that we could have sort of job training for individuals in the community who wanted to, be in the food service industry, teach them how to make nutritious meals, things like that. And then we also, as part of the pre-K readiness piece, we were thinking that if we included community groups that we could have bookmobile, pop-up library kind of things, we could have student-to-student mentorship programs, literacy, education and things. And so if it was this community space, classroom, outdoor classroom, indoor classroom kind of space that could tackle a lot of problems all at once.
So I plan to go back and tell my other coworkers about what went on today, and just kind of go through that process and thinking of like how we need to make sure we include artists and other individuals along, like when we're doing projects in neighborhoods, to make sure we really include more people to get a better project in the end. So.
I'm a local artist here in
Hamilton arts community is so cozy.
It is. It's very small and growing, which also is great for artists because you have a lot of opportunity to be involved in what's happening. But I also head up Inside Out Studio, which is an art studio for adults with disabilities, right around the corner here on High Street. So check that out if you have time. But designing this, what I like from an artist perspective about street art is they don't really put you in a box or make you create a specific theme or design or style. They really let the artists do whatever they want, and they leave it up to that jury process and the selection committee to pick what they feel is the best fit for the building and the community. So when I looked at this blank slate of a wall, I thought, what should I do? And Robert McCloskey seemed to be the most obvious choice. He's very connected to this building. If you're not familiar with his works, he's an award-winning children's author and illustrator. Most famous is probably Make Way for Ducklings.
One of the things that I got out of was the importance of using art to bridge community engagement. And one of the things that I found in my experience with developing places that I think also was reflected here was the fact that in order to create authentic and diverse solutions that help drive communities forward, that art needs to be an integral piece of that.
I got a lot. First and foremost, fresh perspectives are very empowering. Mike as well, he was very inspiring, just the way he's going about doing development. I think me in this position and me living in my own neighborhood, I can look out and I can do projects without necessarily having to have thousands upon thousands of dollars. And working for a community development center, this day made me realize, like, we can do small, very impactful projects. And so I want to take that back, and I want to run it.
Go ahead, the building was built in 1876. It was a part of the old Costman's hardware store. This was the annex building. And they kept fencing and lime and things like that out here, which I never really noticed the building until I thought that I might need more parking for my Main Street building. And then when I got inside, it was like, oh, this is a little gem, we're not gonna tear any more buildings down, not right here. And began to recreate and restore the building. And that means, these columns were 8 inches low, or almost 10 inches, sinking the entire building in. So we engineered some I-beams and brought the building back up. And then over a 10-year period, this is where I'm at right now. And you can go upstairs too and look at that space and more paintings. But this is what I want to see with all these buildings that are over across on Main Street and that we're just neglecting is ridiculous, These could really be important to our future. They're the past and they are our future, I think. Yes. And the artists are always the first ones that get excited about doing something with them.
I think it was just seeing the priority that people are giving creativity in the community. As an artist in a small town, it seems that if you're going to be creative, you need to make money off of it. And that's just, it's all about like monetary exchange as a service, which is important. But the way they talked about it had a much larger scope applied to it. And so it allowed me to look much more beyond just like, oh, I need to make money to pay the bills. Like, how can this affect the community is important to me.
Most of you define creative placemaking as what is actually arts-based economic development or just placemaking. When you add the word creative placemaking, the word creative in front of the creative placemaking, it becomes a different thing than probably what you're thinking about, what you were considering before you came here today. Which is why I'm going to give you guys this primer on what creative placemaking specifically is. Just so you guys know, there's nothing wrong with arts-based economic development or placemaking, but it's not technically creative placemaking. And I'll return to that in a moment when I get to a specific slide. So the National Endowment of the Arts defines creative placemaking as a sentence you can't see because of the screen. So what it says there, you can almost make it out, is that the ultimate intention behind all creative placemaking work is to transform communities socially, physically, and economically into equitable places with the arts at their core. These efforts should actively seek to avoid gentrification and work hard to ensure that the people who help make the neighborhood what it is today, often artists, are still in place tomorrow. So the critical piece there is the word equitable. This is arts, activity, and communal activity happening with the people in that community. They're grassroots initiatives, arts and poor, that are helping improve the neighborhood. Now, the weird thing for you, those of you that are community development practitioners, about this specific tool, like creative placemaking is a tool in your toolbox you can choose to use after today, or maybe you've already been dabbling in it. It's one of the few community development tools that happens to, and this is a grand national challenge, also displace the people that are the tool. So what happens in a lot of communities is that by using the arts to kind of to polish the stone, to share the story, the organic, authentic story about various neighborhoods and communities across our country, it actually makes those places more attractive for people to move in, and then unfortunately displace the very people that because of the supply and demand, places become more interesting and then they have to move out. So what you'll hear me come back to a few times throughout the day is being careful that as many of you may have not done any creative placemaking and hopefully you'll dabble in it after this, you'll find it gains momentum very quickly and you need to be thoughtful about making sure that you're creating permanent places for the people that are then possibly at risk of being moved because you allow them to tell their story.
Really nice to sit at a table of such diverse backgrounds and everybody kind of coming from someplace different in their own work or even the things that they enjoy doing outside of work. So I really appreciated the diversity today.
This project initially was to be 3 workshops, Cleveland, Hamilton, and Zanesville, and we really thought that we would see a difference between the 3 as far as urban placemaking and then suburban or smaller city creative placemaking and then rural, which would have more of a regional approach. And as we were planning this project, it just became apparent that Cleveland wasn't the best place for us to go, and we decided to really focus a little bit more on making Hamilton and Zanesville as strong as they could be and getting more people there, which was really great because that offered us a little bit more flexibility, and we were able to offer travel stipends in that aspect as well to get more people to attend these. As far as change between the 2 workshops, Hamilton and Zanesville, there were a few changes. The biggest one being we shifted the morning around, where we had started with a creative placemaking overview and then what is art and what is community development, and it just became really apparent after Hamilton that that was not the most efficient or effective way to do that. So we started breaking it down: art, community development, and then creative placemaking. We had more examples, so not just from that location, but we also just had more examples of creative placemaking in other parts of the country, which I think is really helpful for people to conceptualize the concept. And then the other big piece that we changed, that I think was actually really effective as far as networking is concerned, was we had curated and assigned the tables beforehand so that we had cross-sector representation at each table. But then we had that be the same arrangement the whole day in Hamilton, but in Zanesville we shifted that later in the day. So I think that allowed more people to get up and stretch their legs and talk to different people, which I think ultimately just goes back to that was the point. We want people to get to know each other and really start these conversations.
Well, it was interesting to take what we had learned in Hamilton, which was our first training session, and kind of get feedback from participants, see how the day went, and then be able to take that knowledge and apply it to the Zanesville session. We changed up the order of the events for Zanesville. Some of the feedback we got wanted to incorporate more of an overview about creative placemaking in the morning. And so I think, if we could do this a couple more times, we'd be able to even refine the process more. But the big difference is that the two communities are very different. What worked in Hamilton didn't necessarily apply to Zanesville, and vice versa. What worked in Zanesville might not have worked as well in Hamilton.
My primary goal was to really set the table for conversations, and I'm very much borrowing language from Lynn McCormick of LISC when I say that, was just getting people there to talk, and we saw that happening, and I saw that in the evaluation cards and the feedback, and I really think more conversations and collaborations will come from this.
Well, I learned quite a bit about creative placemaking, and I also just learned about people, how engaged people are, and just how creative people are, and also how willing people are to get involved. Part of our training sessions was a brainstorming session at the end where you would have to come up with your own idea about different topics and how creative placemaking could help solve those. Some of the ideas just blew me away.
And do you plan to continue this work?
Absolutely. I would very much like to continue this. I think we can take what we've done in Hamilton and Zanesville and really take it around the whole state of Ohio and all sorts of different communities. The communities that we held these training sessions in were so excited for us to be there that we got quite a bit of press, good local coverage. A big highlight for me was being on the news for the first time. And just from those press releases and the newscast, our office got a ton of comments and outreach, wanting to know how we can get involved and wanting to know when the next time these training sessions are going to be held. So obviously, I think that speaks to the success of the events, and also it speaks to the fact that there's this hunger out there for people who want to know more about creative placemaking.
I think the thing that I really learned from this, as far as our networks are concerned, and I think it was underscored by the way we tackled a lot of this project, is we just learn best by doing. And I think that was, as much as we talked about or can recognize that artists and art organizations and community development people speak different languages some of the time, even a lot of the time, and have different tactics and practices, at the end of the day, I think we all just learn best by doing the work, and we're very boots on the ground type people.
Do you plan to continue this work? If yes, how so?
I know Ohio CDC Association would love to continue doing this work. We saw 118 people between the two workshops attend. That obviously represents not just our sector, but we know there's a big demand, and people want to know about this, and people are really interested in it, and a lot of people are doing this work, so maybe there's different ways to shape it, to do not a 101 level, but I think it's been a really great process. We have a really great product, like workshop design right now, and so taking that and tweaking it even more would just make it a thing I would love to continue doing.